Have you ever wondered what would happen if you had 2000s Dexter, took his intrusive thoughts and put them in the mind of an impressionable 90s boy genius also called Dexter? No? Well, I have, and who better to condemn to the mortician's table than the ever-present pestilential saboteur, Dee Dee. But before we get started, we're gonna need something to scale off. Perfect. Today I'll be showing you how to make our lovable duo of Dexter and Dee Dee with colored clay, and also how to make a mortician's table with fully functional wheels.
What do they call you? Wheels?
And a sink. Maybe not so functional, but you'll see. So let's get into it. As we all know, everything evil starts with a metal core, and deep in Dexter's mortuary lives the sickest boy you've ever seen, with a metal torso. Now, to save on clay, by extension dollary dues, it's good practice to give our sculpts a tinfoil core, thus reducing the weight and the quantity of clay required. And after adding a base layer of flesh-toned clay with some jowls and little moobs, I'm already concerned that I may have to blur this out for fear the YouTube algorithm gods think this is something it most certainly is not. And as I do that, let me know in the comments below, who's your Cartoon Network S-tier character?
Oh, you drive me wild.
Moving on swift as we can, this little stump receives his first mouth, a couple of pink nips. Why add pink nips? Well, I don't know. I think that's a question for Past Keith. Hi team, Past Keith here. I thought it was funny. Feel free to subscribe if you also thought it was funny. With that, I'll add Dexter's upper lip and bulk up the top of the head. After a cursory smoothing, I'll give our boy genius his nose and poke in 2 eye sockets before scraping out larger pits to receive a couple of pre-baked eyeballs. I'll drop the eyes into position and chop up a noodly doodad that will round off our eyes. These of course will be covered by glasses down the track, but you'll see later I will be making 2 pairs of glasses for different expressions, and I figured he needed his eyes behind said glasses, so stay tuned for that. I can then smooth these into the head and add some nice juicy lips for an angry mouth before adding a couple of hearing hoops, which are basic little balls dropped onto the side of his head and given just a little bit of shape. I can put Dexter's main body aside for the moment and show you just how I made this bespectacled boy's spectacles. I firstly cut out 2 blue discs with some circular cutters, then cut these just above the halfway mark, and then with my clay extruder and a rectangular template inset extruder, I extrude the glasses frame. Now when you extrude clay, it tends to come out a little bit wonky, and to remedy this, I position the strips between 3 stir sticks, hold these down with a strip of painter's tape, and then bake for about 7 minutes. Once sufficiently cooled down, I can scrape off the cured frame and check the fit. I then glue the lens to the frame, leaving a slight gap between them, and then fill said gap with the leftover uncured clay. I press the still soft clay into the nose to establish a base mold, and that's 1 pair of very tiny spectacles finished and off to the oven. At this stage, Dexter has spent a half hour in the oven before adding his pearly whites by way of smooshing in a couple balls of clay, sharpening up the edges with a metal scraping tool, and adding the individual teeth by means of a firm silicone tool. And looking at the face, he is every bit as maniacal as I had intended him to be, and I love him. The little black booties are nondescript blobs of black clay that I can pinch and prod until they resemble Tom Cruise heels, and with a quick leveling I can chop off the top and add our body positive boy genius. After giving the bottom some attention, we're off to the top by making Dexter's glorious ginger mane, which seems to be a classic Peaky Blinders cut. I can add a divot for the head by way of extra large ball stylus before placing onto the scalp, adding those pokey outbits that all cartoons seem to have, and refining the triple wave to the fringe, suggesting though Dexter was an outcast of sorts, he was a very, very stylish boy. Unlike Mandark and his stupid bowl cut. Stupid Mandark. Using a sharper silicone shaper, I can add some smaller details to the hair, and with a little clay adhesive, the hair, body and feet are fixed together, and it's finally time to give our friend his white lab coat. The lab coat is a tray-thin sheet of clay cut to size and wrapped around the body, making sure to accurately land the break point on his left side. With a pointy skewer, I can locate the 2 drilled armholes and insert his future knife-wielding appendage into the empty socket. A quick creasing of the jacket and I can add a couple of buttons before straightening up my knife armature. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. The idea here was to have the knife armature as part of the overall arm for extra support, and luckily we have just enough that I can shape a knife around the armature wire and in future build a hand beneath. A quick bake in the sand and I can build up Dexter's trademark purple marigolds. For this I add the forearm first, followed by what looks like an oven mitt within which I can score in the individual fingers, of which Dexter definitely has 4, not 3, don't check that, and finally I'll wrap the thumb around the fingers to make a vengeful fist. I then add the tiny little pupils and bake him again. I love this so much and regret nothing. That said, we do need a second arm, so I added the requisite wire, adhesive and white clay as before. As the right hand is brandishing a weapon, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do with the left, but after separating and shaping the fingers, I made a trio of knuckles and metacarpals I can blend into the back of the hand, and I settled on a hand gesture I think we can all be happy with. Did you look? Comment the name of who you would have punched. The forearm gets added and Dexter has one last stint in the oven. Once cooled down, I can place the glasses loosely atop his nose and glue on the glasses' temples as they are known. And with that, that's our boy genius done, and if Dexter is an unstoppable force, then Dee Dee is our immovable object. Dee Dee, being so much larger than Dexter, dictated the scale of this particular sculpt, and as she will be lying down, I don't have to concern myself too much with her structural integrity. The legs are a simple aluminium wire with a tinfoil head, and in an ode to Odd Little Workshops, I'll add the base skin layer and smooth it all together via stop frame. This leaves us with a very disturbing to the touch little fleshy brain upon which we can position a nose. I can then impress in the eye holes and insert Dee Dee's satellite-sized orbs and give them a slightly disturbing rim. Once smoothed in, I'll provide a mouth, and with a sharp silicone tool I add some I'm scared wrinkles, and all I can hear in my head is, "You shall not harm Harry Potter," for some reasons unknown to me. And if you're liking this video, feel free to subscribe for more like it. I just hit 1,000 subscribers, and to celebrate, I'm going to take 2 minutes to tell you exactly how I ended up online. In July 2023, my fiance and I went to see the Barbie movie in the cinema. As is par for the course, when I got home, I watched a lot of YouTube Barbie reviews, and having never shown an interest in clay or sculpting related content before, what I think happened was the algorithm linked me to another large Mattel property, Barney. Specifically, North of the Border's Barney Killed BJ video, and then I went so deep down a rabbit hole I grew a fluffy tail and started googling 1990s Lola Bunny for some reason. From there I binged about 150 of Mr. Adams' videos and bought a block of Super Sculpey for myself, having no idea what I was doing nor ever planning going online with any of it. I discovered the likes of Boy Lie Hobby Time, Studson Studio, Bill Making Stuff, Kalesh Aesthetics, Dr. Garuda, and Jack Creator. I also love the smaller creators like myself that are still navigating our infancy on YouTube, you know, the likes of Kate Sculpts and more recently More Art, who's absolutely killing it, making your favorite cartoons for millennials, but, you know, just a little methy. So how did I end up on YouTube? Well, in 2024, there was what some people called a manufactured recession in New Zealand, and I was made redundant February that year as the company that I was working for restructured. But instead of sitting on my hands, I opted to start a YouTube channel to fill in my days while I looked for work. And honestly, I just got hooked. And talented as people like Jack and Dr. Garuda are, I find myself drawn to channels that take more of the verbal teaching through entertainment approach, hence my own personal approach to my videos. Because trust me, the music-only approach would be so much less time-consuming for me and would save about 10 hours of work in editing, scripting, and voiceover. So to date, I've made 31 videos, some with less than 200 views, and one of them's got over 13,000. I took part in Bill Making Stuff's Big Bot Bash 2.0 last year, even though he had no idea, as I'm a tiny little YouTuber in New Zealand he's probably never heard of. But I made a Wolverine mech for absolutely no reason, and I loved every second of it. And it's one of my favorites. I'm a tiny little channel, but even I've got loyal viewers that comment on every single video. 99% of those comments are lovely, and then you get the 1% that are hilariously evil, which are honestly just funny on the rare occasion that you get one. I even have this one guy called Jeff. My name is Jeff. That I love, that gets me every single time with epic puns in every video. I guess all this is to say that I really enjoy making things with my hands, I love being creative, and YouTube allows me to express that creativity through ideation, sculpting, painting, then editing, script writing, and voice recording. I've learned a lot I never expected to, and who knows, maybe one day I might actually make $1 or $2 off this hobby. Now enough of my rambling, back to the video because we've got a morbid mortician's table to make. The mortician's table, I kid you not, was a last-minute decision that took me about 5 hours to build. I was initially going to make a simple stainless steel slab with 4 balsa wood legs, but then I googled mortician's table and knew I had to make one. Wheels, sink and all. I cut out the sink hole and used this as a template to make the basin. I then cut out the boundary rim to size and glued this frame into place, thinking, is this for bodily fluid containment? A quick sanding, and I can glue the sink into position before moving onto the wheels and some joint connections. I cut out 4 wheels and 8 wheel connections for the top and the bottom of the legs. You can see here I'll be using a timber dowel as my axles, so I find my smallest cookie cutter that said dowel will fit through, add the center holes to my wheels and the leg connections. For the wheel rims, I'll simply press in a slightly smaller circle cutter before making some itty bitty wheel brackets. I firstly mocked up a template that I could then use to replicate 7 more. I draw these out onto a sheet of plastic card and drop them free. After drilling a wee axle hole, I form fit the pieces together and I'm left with a fully functional, adorable little table wheel. I'll denote the top of the wheel to help future me out before gluing the support collars to the underside of the table. With the collars in place, I can start assembling the legs, which I have planned out based on Dexter's height relative to Dee Dee, as I'll need Dexter to be standing on a stool of some sort later. The bracket collars get glued to the brackets and the legs glued snugly within the collars. For the bracing, I sand down the ends of several dowels roughly the same size, glue into position, leaving us with a fully functional, slightly morbid murder slab. But what is a sink without a faucet? Well, just a bucket really. So let's make an unnecessarily fiddly faucet. We'll begin by adding a clay faucet to an aluminium neck. The neck I can wrap around a steel cutter for a smooth radius, which I can add a clay faucet to. Give this a wee insert rim and with a pin poker add the perforations to allow our make-believe water to flow through. Will anyone ever see this or know it's there? Well, no. But you and I will. And that's what's important. I'll make a couple of cylinders for the taps, and with apathy setting in, let's speedrun Dexter's stool to Flight of the Bumblebees, as it was made pretty much the exact same way as the table. With the speedrun complete, I made a little clay topper for the stool, and given the deeds Dexter is up to, I added a anti-slip checker plate finish. To achieve this, I roll the knurling of one of my sculpting tools over the surface until it's completely covered. I finally made some little unremarkable stool shoes, and that is the sculpting done, and we're off to the paint. The table gets a charcoal primer, atop of which I'll sponge on a simple silver. I'll give the bed a once over before using a brush to paint the details such as the taps, the legs, the collars and the brackets, and finish off on the checker plate stool platform. The main man himself receives a wet orange because though I did use colored clay, once baked, that clay becomes pretty lifeless, flat, desaturated, and a little glaze just brings it back to life. I add some white to the orange for some highlights, and then I wet blend the 2 colors before moving on to the gloves. And for the gloves, I happen to have a purple contrast paint to hand. What contrast paint does, by way of sorcery, is essentially all the work for you. The paint naturally finds all the nooks and crannies, applying shadows and highlights with minimal effort on your part. And yes, it is expensive, but also, I'm still learning how to paint, so this is a little shiny, a little blotchy. I just gotta practice a bit more. I then take a regular black acrylic to the boots, the buttons, and the knife for primer. Finally, Dexter's eyes will receive a coat of UV resin, and then the same goes for the glasses. I made a second pair of glasses because the glasses essentially act as Dexter's means of expression, so we have a regular Dexter and an ill-intent Dexter. I then paint the knife silver and use a fine felt tip pen to delineate the teeth before dry brushing the gloves in an attempt to knock back the shine of the paint, and a quick assembly later, that's our boy genius complete, and onto our helpless victim. The whites of Dee Dee's eyes get a touch up as Sculpey Soufflé is so sticky that sometimes it can pick up a lot of dirt like fibers in the air and fluff. The same tidy up is applied to the tights, and once dry, I can use a yellow contrast paint on Dee Dee's hair. Now when sculpting, I did intentionally make her look a bit weather-worn so that I could add this flesh wash under her eyes. giving the impression she's been captive for a while and maybe hasn't been getting the best sleep. Was Dobby in a wig the exact planned outcome? Well, no. But clay's expensive, time is finite, so we march on regardless. I then sponge silver onto a roll of masking tape, which I can then cut to size to gag Dee Dee, which in turn made me laugh in a way that has my family asking questions about my mental state. Oh, what have I done? My mental state aside, I then add the blue and the red or cold and hot appropriate colours to the taps. As for the table itself, I wanted so bad to make this dank, rusty and bloody, but after a conversation with my fiancé, we both agreed that Dexter and also Dexter are clean, meticulous, intelligent creatures that run a tight ship. And to that end, I added a simple black wash for some very subtle recessed shading to allow a minute amount of depth. I then dry brush the entire bench so that the black is only visible in the corners and the joints. Next up on our to-do list, I give Dee Dee's slippers a sanding with a cool little 3D printed sanding tool that I got on Temu for a couple of bucks, and that is our ill-fated damsel complete and ready to be restrained. Firstly, if you're still buying cling film without the built-in cutter, you're not living life to its fullest potential. And secondly, go buy one, then buy refills thereafter. You're welcome. That said, I cut several cling film strips and layer these from foot to head, gluing to the underside of the table as I go. And remember, as always, thanks for stopping by, thanks for 1,000 subs. If you want to see more like this, go check out the channel. There'll be something there for you, I do not doubt. Go make a mess. And back to the video. One final forehead restraint and we can make a little sticky blood by mixing some standard Yoo-hoo and red paint. And as Dexter is known for taking trophies in the form of a blood sample from his victim's cheek, I cut Dee Dee's right cheek and bloody up Dexter's knife accordingly. And with that, we are off to Dexter's mortuary, my friends.